And that's why he's the first president, you see, because it's called virtue and sacrifice and courage. And you have to be able to beat the Brits. You do. It's a nasty world out there. And they haven't yet become our friends. But he does not make himself king, and he could have. And he promises actually to retire. But America has some trouble, and he is begged to come back out of retirement to help create a system that will work, because the Articles of Confederation aren't working. And so he comes out of retirement and presides over the Federal Constitutional Convention, the Grand Convention in Philadelphia in 1787. And there's Ben Franklin, and our friend Hamilton is here too, and James Madison and others. That's Roger Sherman from Connecticut. I think that's actually Hamilton whispering to Franklin. And there's so Madison's right there, Franklin's there, that's Hamilton. But the presiding officer unanimously selected is George Washington. He speaks only once, substantively, on the very last day. The parchment has already been inked, but he thinks there's a mistake. And so they actually unanimously agree to redo the parchment. There's still a smudge in it, because that's how much credibility George Washington has. And without him, there's no Constitution. Okay? And he comes out of retirement. He'd rather be at his farm, you know, but the country needs him. And so just as he went in 1754 when his king called, and just as he went in 1775 when America called, now he's coming back once again, presiding over the convention. The Constitution is ratified. Here's the Constitution. It's being proposed. This is September 19th, 1787. And newspapers are printing the thing start to finish, because it's going to be put to a vote, you see. That's what that preamble is all about. We, the people, do ordain and establish. We got to vote on the thing. It's a short document, not so judges can make shit up. That's not why it's short. It's short so that ordinary people can read it and reread it and reread it and decide whether they're for it or against it. And when was the last time you reread your Constitution? Because if you haven't reread it recently, you can do that. So it's designed for people to be able to read. And here's the last page of that newspaper, and who's, their president? George Washington, president. No, he's not yet president of the United States. He was president, the presiding officer of the Philadelphia Convention. That's why we call it president, by the way, because he was the rather than governor, because he was the presiding officer at Philadelphia, and they created the presidency for him. And people wouldn't have voted for a constitution with a powerful president if they didn't think that it would be Washington, because they knew they could trust Washington. Well, why did? And you see his name. This is that same newspaper, front page. This is actually the Philadelphia Packet. It's a Daily Advertiser. So the convention ends on September 17th. 2 days later, the thing is published in the newspaper. It's either 4 or 5 printed pages. And this is the last page. And you see George Washington's name is there first, above everyone else. And Hamilton's name is there for New York. You see, he's the only New Yorker, Alexander Hamilton, because Lansing and Yates leave the convention in disgust. But you see how he's just above everyone else, George Washington. And so here's your first. The Constitution is ratified. This is your first presidential election. Every single elector who votes for George Washington. Okay? That's why it's all green. North Carolina hasn't yet joined the Constitution. Rhode Island hasn't yet joined the Constitution. And New York can't get its act together. Funny that, of course, it's totally different now. You New Yorkers always have your act together. Not really. Okay. But New York has ratified the Constitution, but it just doesn't cast electoral votes. Every single elector votes for George Washington. Now, technically, every elector votes for 2 people. You vote for 2 people for president. The top 2 vote getters are your president and vice president, respectively. But George Washington is unanimously elected. He's going to be unanimously reelected, too. Now, this is not John Trumbull. But this, why Washington? And you can see it all here. Why Washington? Because he's a general who can beat the Brits. He can beat the Brits. Because he's a man's man, he's wearing his riding boots. He's the greatest horseman in America in his prime. But he's not brandishing his sword. You know, he actually is a general, but he is a man of peace. You see, he's at home with his family. He's a man of war who does not like war. You see, that's why you can trust him. He's got the world at his feet. He understands geostrategy. He understands actually, because he started inadvertently at age 22. He messed up badly. He started the First World War, and because he actually made some diplomatic mistakes. And then he learned a lot about diplomacy and how to work with the French and work with the Brits. This is almost like a chessboard here. He understands, actually, the chess of international politics. He's got the world at his feet. This is Edward Savage. It's in the National Gallery, right? This is the Washington family. Okay? And that's Martha, and they're looking at a map of what will become Washington, D.C., and the world is out there. It's a rising sun in the background. So why is he president? Because he understands world affairs. Because he's actually a military person who can defend America. Because, he's a Southerner. That's a slave back there. Billy Lee, whom he will free in his last will and testament. Slavery is actually part of the Constitution in some very important ways. I'll show you some pictures soon enough about that. Slave states have an advantage in the Electoral College process because each state gets a number of electors based on the number of seats it has in the House of Representatives, which is its free population, plus 3/5 of its slave population. More slaves, more Electoral College votes. Can you spell Virginia? Big state, lots of slaves. So, captures it all. He's a general. He understands the world. He's not threatening war all the time. He's a Southerner. He's a family man. But what isn't here? This is his adopted step-grandson, who will become the father-in-law of Robert E. Lee. This is his adopted step-granddaughter. What's missing? Where's Waldo? What's missing is he has no son of his own. And that's why you can trust him. A rising S. See, in the middle of paintings, there's always something important, like a British officer or the hand extending the commission being surrendered. In the middle here is a rising S-U-N, but not an S-O-N. What's missing in this? Edward Savage is telling you this. Behold a man with no son. Washington, in his inaugural address, the first draft, he cuts out, says, you can trust me because I'm not going to create a throne because I've got no one to give it to because I have no sons. And of the first 6 presidents, you see, Thomas Jefferson has no sons, at least legitimate ones that we know about that bear his family name. And James Madison has no sons. And James Monroe has no sons. Now, John Adams has a son, you see. And his name is Q, as in W. And he becomes president, you see. You are living in a world of dynasty where power transmits, actually, from father to son, and George Washington won't do that because he has no son. And he says that in his first inaugural address. He cuts it out, the first draft. He cuts it out because it's a little too personal. And it's all in this painting. Okay? The most important thing in this painting is who's not there, Donald Jr. I meant Chelsea. No, I'm still getting confused, okay? I meant Hunter, but no, I'm still getting confused, okay? So dynasty up and down is an important part of our story, don't you see? And he's reelected unanimously. Every single elector votes for him, even after they've seen what he's done after the first 4 years. Wow. So now you see why he makes my cut. He's in my top 2.